this such a problem for Blake? Why was that so shady?
Obtain cloud information, steal her personal communications that tipped them off to the fact that Friedman was potentially gearing up for a civil extortion lawsuit against them.
How does a name as well known as Blake Lively end up caught in something as complicated and questionable as potential judicial scrutiny? According to Judge Lyman, there is more than enough in the record to warrant serious inspection, and the outlook doesn't appear favorable. At the center of the unfolding situation is Vanson Incorporated, a little-known company that, on paper, looks like an ordinary business, yet it's now facing intense attention for its involvement in issuing a subpoena connected to a John Doe lawsuit. What initially seemed like a minor, procedural move has instead opened the door to suspicions of possible misconduct. Judge Lyman has made it clear that his concerns go far beyond misplaced paperwork or routine legal mistakes. He wants full clarification on why this shell corporation was created, who was really behind it, and how it was used to collect evidence. The lack of transparency surrounding actions taken by Blake Lively's legal team has rung alarm bells in court, especially when it comes to accessing private communications. While subpoenas are common tools in litigation, the methods allegedly used to obtain this information are now being questioned, and as more details come to light, the case is starting to look less like standard legal strategy and more like something that may have crossed important ethical lines. Judge Lyman even warned the integrity of the legal process must come before convenience or success, a statement that highlights just how serious the situation has become and suggests that important rules may have been pushed, if not crossed entirely. If misconduct is ultimately proven, anything obtained through Vanson Incorporated could be thrown out completely. That would put Blake Lively's case at real risk. Texts, emails, and other private communications that her team relied on could disappear from the record altogether, stripping away the foundation of their argument. Even more concerning is the possibility that the court views this as an abuse of process. In that scenario, the consequences would stretch well beyond one case. The fallout could damage the credibility of her legal team and potentially tarnish Lively's carefully curated public image. For someone whose reputation has long been polished and protected, having every strategic decision dissected under a microscope poses a genuine threat. Judge Lyman's worries aren't limited to technical missteps. He is also questioning whether Lively's team intentionally crossed ethical boundaries in pursuit of an advantage. Was Vanson Incorporated simply a legitimate tool or a calculated way to sidestep established rules? The implication that a Hollywood star of Lively's stature might manipulate the legal system for leverage could seriously undermine public trust. Meanwhile, the very communications obtained through these disputed tactics still sit at the heart of the case. The looming question is whether their contents truly justify the risks taken, or whether her team gambled everything for evidence that ultimately falls short. Either outcome has the power to reshape the entire narrative, turning the case on its head and leaving both the court and the public questioning what truly motivated these high-stakes legal moves.
Attorney saying it was an abuse of process, that her counsel was using hidden corporate shields to evade transparency. Now, this is what yielded those text messages from Jennifer Abel, and then got it into the New York Times. These "we can bury everybody, we can bury anyone," the plan to destroy Lively. These are the texts or the crux of the retaliation campaign. But the question is, was that phone, were these texts legitimately obtained, right? And now it's under intense scrutiny now that a lot of people, sleuths of people, figured out it was subpoenaed via this John Doe anonymous lawsuit labeled to a corporation called Van Zandt. Is that a fair summary of where we are at this point up to now?
That's a pretty good summary, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good.
So why is this such a problem for Blake? Why was that so shady? I guess, can we start there? What is the legal issues with what Blake actually did there? Before we talk about the bigger ramifications, everything else, can you break that down a little more deeper?
Yeah, so to the extent when they shook her down and they cornered her in that office and they demanded her cell phone and they had these security guards there and they escorted her out the building and they have her stuff, they were entitled to have whatever business communications they had on that phone. What they were not entitled to do was go into her personal accounts obtain cloud information, steal her personal communications that tipped them off to the fact that Friedman was potentially gearing up for a civil extortion lawsuit against them and use it for future litigation against them. That is potentially...
Vanson Incorporated may look like a simple, forgettable company on paper, but in Blake Lively's unfolding legal battle, this shell corporation is proving to be anything but ordinary. Her legal team reportedly used Vanson to file a quiet John Doe lawsuit and issue the now controversial subpoena that sits at the center of the dispute. Shell corporations in high-stakes litigation aren't unusual. They're often created to protect identities, manage sensitive information, and keep strategies from immediate public exposure. But their very purpose also invites scrutiny. They act like cloaks, shielding the people and decisions behind complex legal maneuvers. In this case, it appears Lively's team may have hoped to create distance, or at least the appearance of clean hands, by keeping her name off the front lines. Judge Lyman, however, isn't entirely persuaded. His skepticism has intensified concerns about whether the process unfolded as it should. Why would such a high-profile legal team channel key actions through an obscure corporation? Was it a strategic safeguard meant to minimize publicity if things went wrong? Or, more troublingly, was it an attempt to operate outside the normal transparency expected in court proceedings? Regardless of the intention, the involvement of Vanson Incorporated has transformed what might have been a routine legal tactic into a focal point of controversy, one that now raises deeper questions about judgment, ethics, and the true strategy at play. The risks are hard to ignore. When a shell company like Vanson Incorporated becomes central to a case, the secrecy surrounding it immediately raises suspicions, and once that secrecy is examined in court, it can quickly appear deceptive. The controversy deepens around the subpoena directed at the private communications of Stephanie Jones, formerly linked to Jennifer Eel, where the stated purpose may have been to support claims of retaliation or misconduct. Yet Judge Lyman's concern focuses on how the messages were obtained and whether ethical or even legal limits were crossed. If the court finds that those boundaries were violated, any evidence gathered could be ruled inadmissible, potentially undermining Lively's legal arguments and damaging her credibility in the public eye. In the most serious scenario, a finding that the legal process was misused could carry consequences extending beyond the case itself. At the center of everything, however, is the unanswered question of what those subpoenaed messages actually revealed, with reports suggesting they could touch on accusations of smear tactics and retaliation, claims that, if ever verified, could shift the narrative entirely. Whether obtaining them was worth the risk is something only the court's final decision will determine.
Lyman hasn't been very Team Justin, it seems. He's been giving Blake a lot of, where the deposition's going to happen. All this stuff keeps falling in. Are you noticing that? Even now as content creators, there's one, he just doesn't seem like he's being very friendly to anybody other than accommodating Blake. Are you seeing that too? Or do you feel like he is being fair? What is your neutral perspective on that?
I feel where you would think that he's being, skewed towards the Lively side and unfair to the Friedman parties. But there has, a lot of that I think Friedman has brought upon himself through salacious PR drops that he's issued, the whole Exhibit A thing, the whole thing where he wrote a deposition basically accusing them of fraud, and that was on the docket, and it had to be removed from the docket. If you just objectively look and take those two things out, and you look at how he's ruled on some of the discovery stuff, he's been pretty even-handed. It's not enough to say that he is favoring one side or the other just yet. I think that he's been pretty fair. I think that the Van Zandt ruling compelling that information was a big hit for the Lively parties, a huge hit for the Lively parties. And the whole deposition thing, I know people are up and learn, oh, this is not fair. She gets home field advantage. If I'm doing a deposition, I don't care if I got to do it at my office or I got to do it in your office. You're still going to face cross-examination. I'm still going to depose you. I don't care if I'm not sitting in my comfortable seat. Like, I'm there to do a job. And so you want home field advantage? Fine. And I think maybe from Friedman's perspectives, like, look, she's asking for these protective orders, and this is gonna potentially lead to other stuff. We just need to get the deposition done. They're trying to run out the clock potentially. Just do it at your office. So now there's no more room for her to say that, hey, this is unfair. They're trying to take advantage of me. They're trying to beat up on me at their office. They're trying to put plant people in the deposition to make me uncomfortable. Said, look, let's just make you as comfortable as possible. Now you have no more excuses. Do the effing deposition.
It is almost a win for Justin, I feel like, because exactly, it's like, okay, yet another thing they're giving Blake, no excuses later that you had trouble, whereas Justin can claim, we gave her everything. What else can we still do? Yeah. So it is odd. But so final question, because they asked, could it go to jail? And you're like, it's unlikely. Is it more likely that Stephanie Jones could go to jail? And if Blake was more involved and actually pushed that stuff to happen, could there be any sort of criminal facing
they really gotta flesh out those facts, because to the extent that this was a directive of Stephanie Jones to get this stuff, then she would be the one directly implicated, including whoever were her agents potentially that knew they were doing criminal stuff. How do they tie that into Lively, that they were acting under Lively's direction? That would implicate Lively, but I don't see that connection yet. All I know is the theory is they shared those communications with Lively either at her direction or voluntarily, and I don't know which is which. It's not impossible that she's going to go to jail, but if there is a fact pattern that suggests that Lively ordered her to do these illegal theft of personal messages on Jones or Abel's phone, then potentially she could face criminal scrutiny through agency theory, I guess, potentially. But it's far-fetched, you know?
It is far-fetched.
I don't think she's going to be the one under the fire for this one.
Well, I appreciate you guys can check out Omar over the Tilted Lawyer. A final question, like where do you feel like the sides stand right now? Justin obviously had his case dismissed. He's waiting. Yeah. Where do you put your points? Where are you betting on the outcome currently as we face things right now?
Well, if they got the retaliation smear campaign evidence and it's only about sexual harassment, then Baldoni is in prime pole position going forward for this thing, because she's going to get obliterated on her sexual harassment claims. If it's not, and I still think that Baldoni at trial has the advantage, because the jury doesn't care about whether or not they're going to be able to litigate a cross-exam that's now been dismissed with prejudice, whatever. What is the sexual harassment claims? And then they're going to go through them point by point and see how ridiculous this is. I think most people, on average, if you just poll people that have followed this case, are of the opinion that the sexual harassment claims are frivolous. And they're going to have, they have an uphill battle to fight at trial, convincing a jury that her complaints were reasonable or actionable. And so I really think, in spite of everything that's going on, that Baldoni, his cross complaint being dismissed notwithstanding, I think that he's in pole position going forward in this litigation. There's nothing left. There's no more screwing around. We're doing trial March of 26.
Behind the scenes of this escalating legal battle, Blake Lively's team secured private text messages from Stephanie Jones, and these exchanges have quickly become central to the case, tied to allegations of retaliation against Jennifer Ale and other key figures. As Ale's former publicist, Jones provides a crucial link to understanding the sequence of events that led to the lawsuit, and the messages themselves are reportedly layered and explosive, detailing conversations that suggest coordinated efforts to undermine Ale and silence critics of Lively, raising the possibility of a calculated smear campaign designed to protect the actress's public image. Yet, the controversy extends beyond the content of the texts to the manner in which they were obtained. Judge Lyman is scrutinizing whether proper legal procedures were followed, and if the collection is deemed improper, Lively's team could face accusations of breaching ethical duties or fiduciary responsibilities, placing them in a precarious legal and reputational position. On the surface, the communications appear to support Lively's narrative by redirecting attention toward others, but their questionable origins make them a double-edged sword. If ruled inadmissible, they could weaken her case and expose her team to intense scrutiny, arriving at a particularly vulnerable moment given the fragile state of public trust in celebrity figures. The revelations surrounding Blake Lively's role in It Ends With Us are particularly damaging, as the texts reportedly reveal patterns of retaliation against critics, suggesting deliberate efforts to suppress dissent amid a moment of heightened controversy. If these claims are accurate, the narrative shifts from a standard legal dispute to what appears more like a strategic PR battle conducted behind the scenes. While it remains unclear whether Lively personally orchestrated these efforts, the communications depict a star intensely focused on controlling her public image. Judge Lyman has already ordered the release of these texts, highlighting their importance while also raising concerns about the methods used to obtain them. Any confirmed discrepancies could render the evidence inadmissible, turning what seemed like a legal advantage into a significant liability. This legal gray area makes the messages both pivotal and perilous, capable of either strengthening Lively's defense or undermining it entirely. Beyond the courtroom, the texts may expose broader PR strategies, revealing the lengths her team allegedly went to shape public perception. Amid all this, the pressing question remains whether the risks her team took were justified, or if they simply opened the door to an even larger storm, one complicated further by TikTok controversies, marketing missteps, and a disgruntled creator whose involvement could add yet another layer of complexity to the case.